Run with that. See how much. Okay.
Is it enough that we should probably do that intro again?
I mean, if you don't want any of that technical babble in there, yeah, probably.
Well, I mean, that's the same as what our intros are, it's just babble. So it's going to stay. Congratulations, everyone. Welcome. We are going to do something that we haven't done yet because anything we do is something we haven't done yet, except for talk about a game. Not for strangers. You should definitely check that out if you haven't already. It was a pain in the ass to edit.
More audio changes.
And we're just going to keep going through audio changes anyways. So
learning as we go.
That's totally not going to be an issue. I'll probably throw up a cute little graphic saying audio loading again.
Yay, cute graphics.
Today we have suggested topics that people want to hear educated people talk about. So we decided we'll talk about it instead of waiting for educated people to talk about it and see where that goes. I don't know any
educateds. I dropped out in 6th grade.
The rules are pretty simple. I don't know what we're talking about. Jordan doesn't know what we're talking about. And
do you even know the topics? Because I don't even know the topics.
I have the topics. I had to write them down at one point, so
sure.
I have had them written. I do not remember what they are.
Okay. So you're going in like semi-blind. You've seen the trailer. I don't even know what movie we're walking
in. And anything that is suggested as a topic that we have absolutely no understanding of, we will probably do a quick Google search and talk based on what we can search.
You can get that spicy keyboard ASMR.
If we have some kind of opinion, we will give that. I'll probably give my opinion whether I have any information on it or not, so that's always good. The real question that we need to identify is each of the individuals I asked gave us 3 topics apiece. Which individual do we want to start with? We have Mr. Lasagna.
Mr. Lasagna, I'm a fan.
Miss Agent Spence.
Agent Spence.
Mm-hmm.
Not so sure about that one. She seems shady.
And the sweet old grandmother, Madam Miriam.
Madam Miriam. All right. Obviously, Mr. Lasagna.
Mr. Lasagna is gonna start us off. Alrighty. So, Mr. Lasagna said that he would be interested in hearing some people talk about AI-generated video games.
AI-generated video games.
The idea that plot, characters, things of that nature could be entirely generated by AI, and that input could change or alter depending on...
So that's interesting, specifically applying that to AI, because you already have, obviously, like that's what we refer to as NPCs in video game as AI, but they're not obviously a real form of artificial intelligence. Then you also have procedurally generated stuff, so it's just sort of like a script, essentially, that the computer is told to follow to create different maps and different stuff. But are we talking about true learning AI making an entire game?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's what I have down as the topic. I think more so the idea would be that you could essentially put this video game platform out, and the video game platform would be, say, a D&D basis. But instead of needing a dungeon master, there would be an AI who can generate this world for you. So every time you log in, whatever the AI is feeling that day, it's going to be what your dungeon is.
That would be pretty cool. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I get that.
Or maybe based on inputs. Like if it's one AI, let's say it's connected to the internet, because we can do that now. We're in the modern age. It would be taking in inputs from everyone, and the AI clearly needs some directive or purpose, so that would likely be hopefully the entertainment of us, and excluding corporate greed, where they're clearly going to be like, what makes people pay the most money, and force the AI to do that.
Yeah.
So let's go with the AI wants to make us happy. It wants to give us an experience we enjoy. So it takes in factors from other gamers and its dungeons, and its dungeons would only get better and better and better. So when the game first comes out, you might get more simplistic
So do we want to give
ideas.
our theoretically AI made game a genre currently, or do we just want to say general video game?
I think it could be applied to multiple genres. Like let's just do that. Let's work our way through the different genres that an AI could work with. Like I already said Dungeons and Dragons, so if it started as an
RPG.
action adventure RPG kind of thing,
Yeah.
um, I imagine the dungeons would
Which, I
probably
mean, that's probably the closest to what we currently have now, right? Like, that's your procedurally generated roguelikes. Well, it's not as adaptive as you're saying. It's the closest to having something change every single time you play it, but it's not learning from those different runs or from other players.
yeah. So in this instance, it would be like the dungeon randomizes every time, but it knows that the last 100 times that it's randomized a dungeon where it has a pitfall trap, people scream, kick it, or immediately hit the quit button. So it's like, okay, we're not gonna put pitfalls in it anymore.
Or we put more pitfalls, depending if this is a masochistic
Yeah. However, the AI develops, maybe the AI develops a love for torturing its players.
game. Yeah, the FromSoft approach.
Um, what other genres could it jump into?
I was thinking that one of the first things that came to my mind was like racing games. You just got like tracks
Okay.
and I mean even the again, like I said earlier, the term the AI, the NPCs that you would race against could become more adaptive towards you could get a sense of online competition that you get with players, but with just NPCs essentially.
So if you're the kind of person that does racing, like someone who cares about racing games, you try to avoid crashing into other
Yeah,
drivers.
if you're playing your hardcore sims.
Then you would get AI that are also reactive drivers who are doing their best to avoid you.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are one of those drivers who just crashes into other people to win, you're going to get a need for speed.
Yeah, you'll have a need for speed. You'll have some people on the one side. You're gonna have the first group that you said. You have your Gran Turismos. You have your mainline Forzas, and on the other line, yeah, you got your Need for Speeds, your Burnouts, even to the highest degree, your Mario Karts.
But all generated from the same game. I mean,
Essentially, it
that's
could
the
be, yeah.
concept.
I
Yeah.
mean, maybe Mario Kart's a bit more of a stretch, but yeah, it could be. You could have a arcadey racer and a sim racer in the same game.
That'd be interesting to see how the AI adapted to, say, like the vehicle choices that it makes. If you're more the bruiser, the need for speed, I crash into people to make sure I win. Then the AI starts picking Hummers and trucks and big vehicles, so you can't do that. Interesting.
Yeah. So any other genres come to mind? I said driving. Obviously, we started with
The first one that came to my mind that I would be interested to see is horror. I would like to
horror.
see how an
Okay,
AI
that would
picks
be.
up.
Did you ever see that not game but demo PT way back?
Mm,
So it was this. It was essentially a demo for Silent Hill. Hideo Kojima, who does he did the Metal Gear Solid stuff, and then most recently did Death Stranding.
mm-hmm.
He was going to do supposedly was going to do a Silent Hill game. So they released this demo that was just called PT, which was literally just stood for playable teaser. Yeah.
Genius.
Yep. And while none of it has to do with procedurally generated, it did sort of have this vibe that it could have been, because essentially you were just walking through this one L-shaped hallway over and over and over again, and each time that you might see something different. You might hear the like sort of ring-like creature that's behind you. It and so if that became procedurally generated, if now you don't if you watched your favorite, you know, let's player go through it, you were like, oh, I want to check that out myself, your experience could be completely different. You could be terrified in a whole different way.
And it wouldn't ruin it. You could
No,
watch
yeah,
someone play a horror game and it wouldn't ruin that experience for you. You would
yeah,
be like, oh, I know a jump scare's coming.
that Well, we could talk more about horror if you'd like, but that just gave me the thought. Visual novels. If you more not so much visual novels, sorry, dating sims. You
Hmm.
had AI generated dating sims. I mean, that would be a shut-in's dream. They would just be able to experience their possible uh, yearning for a date in the comfort of their own home.
So what's interesting with that thought is that does this mean that the AI would generate characters and it would make sure those characters stick to the confines of what it's built in the idea that if it built Stacy, Stacy's always going to love someone who has a dog. So if you tell her you have a dog, always going to love it. But it's going to continue to create characters to an almost infinite degree to where when you enter this dating sim.
I imagine that it would be a bit more dynamic. I would imagine that there would be a preset of like the characters that you're making do exist in the real world, quote unquote. So Stacy has to emulate real life. Stacy can't be a ninja who assassinates presidents every other weekend. There might be a Stacy out there that does that, but as far as I'm concerned, we're going for a real life depiction. So yeah, you would have a real life Stacy, and then she would just kind of grow naturally. You would get to know Stacy through the course of you playing this dating sim, and she would get to know you.
Sure,
And
but wouldn't every Stacy be different since this is because you're saying pre-generated, but wasn't the idea that the AI creates this on the spot?
yeah, it would. Basically, there would just be like a parameter to follow. Like it can't. That's what I was trying to get at with the whole ninja assassinate thing. Like it can't go too far out the bounds of reality, but it doesn't have to make it Stacy. It can make it Rachel. It can make it John. It can make whoever. When you start up the game, and you can continue pursuing your Rachel, your Stacy, your John, or you can move on to someone else, or a two time if it's that kind of game.
So depending on the dating sim that we're getting into, if it's a city, you could essentially not just emulate dating in real life, but you could have an AI that's giving you the haptic feedback of what you should expect while dating, but almost a guarantee that you'll succeed because it's still a video game.
Yeah, failure would definitely be harder, or rejection or whatever would be less terrible, because I guess if you got rejected, you just start over or something. There's no.
Yeah.
But then, I mean, even if you started over, it might be just the fact, if it's super dynamic, it might be the fact that, oh, I messed up with Stacy, and Stacy's just gone. Like your version
Oh
of
my god, the
Stacy,
AI killed Stacy.
yeah, your version of Stacy that you developed, or that was developed while you were playing. However, the AI is working Stacy together. If you mess things up with Stacy, if you said that her dog looks stupid and she hates you for that, you could just never see Stacy again.
Oh, she shouldn't have had a poodle.
It's between you and Stacy, I guess.
So what you just described to me was essentially Nintendogs, but with generated people that are going to cause a lot of issues for people who are dedicated to that game. Like
Yeah,
you
it
ignore the game
might
for
be a
too
bit
long.
much. I mean, people already develop pretty strong connections with 2D characters,
Yeah.
but yeah,
If they have the ability to actively respond to you, if I can log into a game and I'm like, "Hey, sorry Stacy, been at work," and Stacy is able to be like, "Yeah, you typically have longer days on Thursday. It's okay, hun." I'd be like,
yeah. Now we're getting. You ever see that movie Lucy?
uh-huh.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
that's we're getting into that now.
I mean, it can almost get
Was it Lucy?
horrifying.
Was it Lucy or Red?
Wait, Lucy. No.
We're talking about the Scarlett Johansson AI movie, right? So are we thinking of the same thing?
No, I think I was thinking of her.
Her. That, no, I'm thinking of the right. How do
Yeah,
I go from Lucy to?
Lucy is the Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah,
She's
it's
a
another
hundred
Scarlett
percent
Johansson,
brain
and
or
then
whatever.
Red is like a completely different
I have no
version.
idea what red is.
Her is what I was thinking
Yeah,
of.
that's what I was thinking. Um,
I'm sorry.
I don't remember where I was. Oh, so this, I have no doubt that if an AI generated video game dating simulator exists, this could happen. But what do you do when your online relationship becomes toxic?
Oh yeah.
What do you do when the AI is so used to you getting on every day, but then you get a girlfriend
Oh
in
my
real
god,
life?
it's like MMO login rewards, but now it's like I don't any
Like
of
they actively punish you and
yeah,
yell at
like
you for not getting on.
yeah, like there's if you've ever played any games like that
Mm-hmm.
where they say, you know, get on a straight week and then we'll give you X reward or something. So you're incentivized to get on every day.
But there's no downside to it. Like you
Yeah,
don't get on it, it's like, all right, well, I start back over.
sure. Yeah, but the downside is that you don't get the reward.
Right.
So now the downside is you lose the girl or man or
Not just that, they can actively like attack you.
yeah, they could berate you for it. Yeah.
They be like, wow, I can't believe you moved me into this new home and then you just leave for a week.
You go and you hang out with some real life friends. Oh God, what does she
Oh,
do
and
then?
yeah, and
What do
then
they do then?
the AI can be like, oh, are you cheating on me?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh,
I don't like this dystopian game we just went. Can we go
oh,
back to the D&D one?
yeah, that was a nice little neat dungeon crawler where the worst case scenario, the AI became a masochist.
yeah, that's fine. Again, that's just FromSoft.
Or no. The AI would become a sadist, wants to inflict pain.
Correct. Yeah.
Well, I think I'm good to go to a different topic because
Let's
AI generated games
let's move on
was
from
a it was a good
terrifying
idea that
Stacy.
yeah went crazy. Um, Unsurprisingly, what what started Mr. Lasagna's topic was the AI generated, which immediately led me to Dungeons and Dragons. His next topic is artificial reality Dungeons and Dragons.
So it's not far off what we were already talking
Kind of, but instead of an AI just pre-generating these random worlds so you could essentially endlessly do one shots. In this instance, it's put on a headset, put on goggles, maybe even put on like gloves and leg braces. You could even have a platform like Wii U, but you know, good. Uh,
about.
and you would have a whole world of sensory on you to interact with
Yeah.
Dungeons and Dragons, a
Yeah.
fantasy setting.
Yeah. I mean there's an anime called Sword Art Online, that is a very popular anime. It's a very controversial anime. But is that it's their equipment is called nerve gear. It's just a helmet or later becomes some goggles that you put on that essentially just taps into your brain and just makes it so that, you know,
It
pretty far
inceptions
fetched.
you.
Yeah, it deceptions you, which is without the dreaming.
Yeah,
Um,
it just knocks into your neural
yeah,
waves, and that's all you see.
yeah, it takes it over. And coincidentally enough, I don't remember exactly when that anime came out, but the first like iteration of the Nerve Gear came out in 2022
Hmm.
in their world.
What what do you think you would prefer when it comes to artificial reality? Would you want something like that where essentially you lay down in your bed or you sit in a chair or you do whatever and you put on a helmet and it just essentially blacks you out? You go into a comatose state, but your brain is still active, so you're dreaming, but the dreaming is being guided by a robot, so you're very specifically seeing specific imagery?
Mm-hmm.
Or would you prefer more of the Ready Player One idea where it's what I was saying? You have all this gear that just loads you into a virtual world, so you simulate being there.
I mean the former, the sort of sword art like brain hijack one sounds more far fetched, but also sounds more immersive. It's the one that could easily I say could emulate, you know, your smells, your tastes,
Mm-hmm.
all your senses. Um, with it,
Probably
whereas
to a harmful degree.
to a harmful that's the part of sword art. You die in the game, you die in real life.
Out of curiosity, does Sword Art Online touch on eating?
It
in the
does,
real
yeah.
world?
Yeah, it does.
Do you eat in the real world, or do you have to be spoon fed IVs while you're playing the game?
Oh, you meant in the real. It
Yeah.
simulates eating in the game.
Well, yeah, sure, but if your body, like my biggest thing was I would prefer the Ready Player One because I'm still moving. I would hate to go into this comatose state, love the game that I'm playing, but wake up and get this groggy sense of like
Yeah, no, they don't
narcoleptic
really touch on that.
muscles.
The most they touch on that is in the course of the first season, the players get trapped in there, so it becomes a death game thing. So once the outside public is aware that these people are trapped, and if they take off the helmet, they'll be killed, and blah blah blah, then they're brought into hospitals and hooked up to IVs. But in terms of, let's say things didn't go wrong, or in the later seasons, it's less dramatic. They fixed that problem, believe it or not.
Hmm.
It's just kind of like, you play a game for 3-4 hours, I guess, and get off or something. They don't really. Which, I mean, to be fair, you can get that feeling now. It's not uncommon for the true hard, die hard gamers to play for 10 hours straight, and then finally put the controller down, and they have crusty eyes, or
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
stumble into the kitchen.
No, no, no. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm just when I play a game, even if I'm sitting in a chair looking at a TV, I move a lot. Like
Okay.
I'll switch my position, I'll get up,
Gotcha. So you think
put
like
my
your
legs
body
around.
just gets sore from lack of movement?
Yeah, just not moving at all.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, most of the time when we sleep, we still move. So if we are put into a state where we're just not moving at all, I feel like it could be very bad for your muscles.
Yeah. I mean, the Ready Player one is interesting. Would that imply that like you have a whole room that you're essentially doing, or is it just?
It depends on which part of the Ready Player One movie you're taking into effect. So in the beginning, it's just a headset with some uh, Oculus 2 style um, controllers in your hands.
Yeah.
But then later on, he gets an adaptive suit, which he puts on his whole body, and he quote feels everything, including a crotch sensor when he gets
I don't like.
grinded upon.
I don't like that. And I kind of do like that.
I mean, they do hit on the idea of like pain. The main villain gets one of those suits, and I think he gets kicked in the nuts, and that gets simulated.
Okay.
But then there's also the in the movie, the corporation that is running it, they have like gamer chair bubbles essentially. So it's a gamer chair, but it the sides of it come out to kind of create your own isolated room in a sphere, and it's just all projected all around you. And when I say projected, it's still done in a way that you are in theory in the game. So you're not looking at a screen, it's still right in front of your eyes, but they're more isolated in these little bubbles. So I don't think you need a whole room, but the way it was advertised in Ready Player One was essentially, yeah, you can play with just a headset, but if you really enjoy it, get an adaptive suit. You really, really enjoy it, get a whole room dedicated to it, kind of thing.
Interesting.
There's also some disconnect in that movie because it shows that the main character doesn't have to move around in the game world, and then later in the movie they show people like running into the streets trying to find stuff and like getting thrown into traffic, and yeah, there's some inconsistencies in the movie.
The whole room is interesting. Like I could see that in a sort of, and I know that it does. I've never been to one, but it does kind of exist in that you can go to facilities that just have a whole bunch of like top of the line VR equipment, and they have some VR sort of different interactable things that you can do, just similar to, I don't know, sort of indoor playground things that you could go to as a kid or something like that. But yeah, it'd be interesting if the technology advanced and they had just a whole room, again similar to like escape room style things, but as opposed to it being a room pre-set up with furniture and stuff for you to open up books and stuff to solve whatever mystery, it's now just a probably 6-screened room that immerses you. And like, yeah, theoretically there'd be some sort of, again, something that we have, like the VR treadmill things, but it would be the entire floor or a sensor, a laser sensor or something, and that would emulate you walking forward, so you could walk around,
Mm-hmm.
whatever D&D dungeon has been created. I also wonder how that would do with motion sickness, because I know there's various people who can really suffer from motion sickness when it comes to that. So I wonder if it was so much that like you're actually one to one walking in this world, would you still get motion sickness?
There's no blur, no way for you to identify the physical difference. I don't know because I don't have major motion sickness, but I can get it in VR. But it's mainly from if a game, if I move my head and it's blurry, or if I have any kind of inability to process quickly.
I guess that would be the tricky part, like your field of vision in this sort of this huge room thing. I guess you would need some kind of like headset in that regard, because how would it be matching? Like if it's just like the room we're in, like a 10 by 10 room or whatever this is, and you're just walking forward in the screen in front of you projects a dungeon with some goblins or whatever in front of you, and you decide to look to the left to look down the other corridor. Like, I mean, I guess the corridor would be right there the whole time. Yeah, I don't know. For some reason, that's just not clicking in my head.
I mean, I'm thinking you're just missing one layer to your room. You have TVs on all of the walls, and that's going to be projecting your field of vision in terms of field of or your depth.
Yeah.
So they will emulate the idea that this is further away, and then you add projectors in like the ceiling or whatever, or on the floor, and those are going to be the ones that are projecting what's directly underneath you. So by having something on the wall that's projecting something further away or creating the illusion of further away with shadows, you can see the difference.
Okay. Yeah.
What I really like about AR, uh, this idea of artificial reality, this virtual gaming, 3D platforming. Something I've always really liked about it is that a lot of people who don't play video games immediately discredit video games as a whole. Everything about it, they're just like, I don't like it. It's not for me. Blah, blah, blah. And that's fine if you don't like video games. However, I've found that when I got the Oculus and I would sit in it, I wouldn't typically want to play games as much as it was just peaceful and relaxing to me to go into their TV setting, and they just had a bunch of fan created environments of virtual reality, and I would sit and just kind of be in those environments.
Yeah.
I would sit, there's one that was a greenhouse underwater, and that was a really cool one. And so if this technology got to the point where you didn't have motion sickness as an issue, it would be so relaxing, and I think it would draw a huge audience to be able to put this in your workout room and just take a walk through a national park.
Oh yeah, I would. Yeah, just on the treadmill or whatever.
Walk on the beach, just sit in the, well, you wouldn't be sitting in the sand, but you could sit and just look at the ocean coming at you. I think that
I mean, that's always the worst part of the beach anyway, is the sand itself. So
yeah, yeah.
Get past that and just have the nice waves come at you. That'd be lovely.
Yeah, and I think it would draw a huge non-video game crowd to want to do that. I could even see business leaders having rooms like this for their conference rooms, where they want to call in a big conference meeting, and instead of having this very standard uh, table in a boardroom overlooking a city, you could have this. If you have across the seas businessmen coming over, you can create a more traditional environment for them to try and make them feel more comfortable in the setting. You could do all kinds of things with it outside of just
yeah. Augmented reality is artificial augmented, whichever is is an exciting field. A field that I don't know particularly a lot about, but fun to see where it goes.
Yeah. On that same note, something that I always really liked in Mass Effect was on the Citadel. they had those artificial gardens,
Yeah.
and I always thought they looked super pretty. So the idea that you could get the beauty of nature and plants just projected anywhere you want, that's kind of nice.
Yeah. Absolutely. So you have three topics from each person, right?
Correct. Mr. Lasagna has one more
So
topic.
why don't we get into Mr. Lasagna's lasagna? Apologies. Last topic. We'll wrap this up for
Okay. Uh, Mr. Lasagna would like us to talk about the singularity.
today. The singularity.
Because it is phrased as the, I'm assuming it's in reference to something specific and not just singularities as a whole, which I love.
So
I'm gonna do a quick Google.
I'm. Is that the okay? Now we're getting into the Googles.
Yeah. You
Um,
want to get that ASMR typing, or do you just want to trust that I can do it on my own?
here I'll get a bit of looking. The sing.
I was reassured when I wrote this down that the first thing that comes up is what it should be.
Technological singularity?
That's
A
what I got. I
hypothetical
got a
point
week.
in time in which technological growth becomes uncontrollable and irreversible, resulting in unforeseeable changes to human civilization. Won't go beyond that. Interesting. So that's not what I was thinking. I thought we were talking like either the beginning or the end of the universe. Technological singularity. That's interesting.
So is that definition essentially saying, um, actually, hold on. I think I was talking over you when we did the beginning of that, so I'm going to reread it
Sure.
for the sake of everyone.
Yep.
The technological singularity, or simply the singularity, is a hypothetical point in time at which technological growth becomes uncontrollable and irreversible, resulting in unforeseeable changes to human civilization.
I guess if we're talking stereotypically, that's like the AI takeover, right? Like that's your Terminator, your iRobot. Like the technology has become beyond what humanity can currently manage. It evolves beyond humanity. That's my first thought, at least.
Oh, we're talking some Terminator level robots start building robots and
Yeah,
decide that humans
yeah.
aren't needed.
If it's less sci-fi, I wonder what is that supposed to look like? Is that just like I don't know, sort of is that stepping into I mean it's still sci-fi, but is that like nanotechnology computers or something that are sort of self-building, self-repairing, but not quite world domination?
Well, so it said that human irreversible changes was what was
Yeah.
being implied. It didn't necessarily imply that it was bad. Well, it said it was out of human control.
Yeah, it's becomes uncontrollable and irreversible, resulting in unforeseeable changes. Humans. So I mean that inherently means our speculation is just that. But it is
What if it's not in reference necessarily to robots taking over, but this idea that we develop technology so quickly and we're so eager to start producing it that we run out of the raw materials to be able to continue this path, but at the same time, because we have made it, we cannot go backwards either.
yeah. There's apparently a book on this. Now I want to read this book, The Technological Singularity. Murray Shanahan. Apologies. MIT Press Essential Knowledge Series. Sounds desperately interesting.
I guess I will find a way to link it into the description.
Um,
By the way, guys, I'm not a YouTube poster. I'm new to all this, so when I say figure it out, I mean I actually have to figure this out. Probably just gonna do a copy paste job.
it'll be fine. This is an interesting one. I felt like the other two I could ramble on, but this feels like a concept that I know nothing about, which I guess is the point of this game. But man, this is a big one. Like this isn't, I know nothing about a lot of things. I know nothing about culinary sciences, really. I can slap a burger on a pan and make something that I'll eat, but I don't really know the sciences that go into that. But I can speculate on that for at least a little bit. This is This is some high level stuff, at least to me.
Well, don't worry. I'm happy to speculate on things that are well above my
I
educational
mean, I'll do
authority.
it too, but I don't even know where to begin on this one.
So I think the big thing that I'm doing right now is I want to visualize one, why they're calling it a singularity, and two, what that looks like, the progression leading up to it, not necessarily it itself. But if it's referring to a singularity, that always refers to a whirlpool like gravitational force where the center is such a mass of crushing uh, force that nothing can survive it. That's what
So we have
singularities are.
two, just to expand on that exact point, to get a bit more official with it. We have two definitions of singularity. We have the one that basically you were just saying, a point in which a function takes an infinite value, especially in space time when matter is indefinitely dense at the center of a black hole.
Mm-hmm.
But then you also have the state, fact, quality, or condition of being singular.
I don't think that's what we're.
I mean, in a way, I guess, yeah, I think it's closer to the black hole thing, but it could also, if it's essentially the point where right now we have your iPhone or your Android or your Windows or your Mac or your Xbox or your PlayStation or your car or your boat or your plane, or we have a whole bunch of different forms of technology. What if this sort of concept is it all sort of coming into one, this one thing that is everything.
Okay, so your idea is you're saying that the singularity is all of our iPhones transformed together into one supercomputer.
Essentially, yeah, like you can now you right now you use you know anywhere from a couple to a dozen to, for some of the more extreme folks out there, 100 different devices in a day to get through your day, to make it work, to do your job, get back from work, to make your dinner, to take your shower, to go to bed. What if that all is just done with one thing?
An omni tool that is capable of being a car, a phone,
Yeah, yeah, essentially.
okay. I the only thing with the original definition why I don't see that is I don't understand how that's irreversible. How can like if everything merges into one super
Yeah,
thing,
I mean,
why can we no longer make a standard phone?
yeah, I mean, it is definitely less dramatic than a black hole. Um, it would just basically be like, as opposed to it being something that is completely irreversible, which granted was the original definition that we read, it would be something that is practically irreversible.
Hmm.
So, in the same way that, aside from your very distinct outliers, no one's going back to a rotary phone to make their phone calls. The inconvenience of it just isn't worth it for,
Mm-hmm.
I would guess, at least 99%, if not more, of people. So if you have this Omni tool device, I feel like that's the same sort of thing. But now, as opposed to just getting rid of one type of technology, it's got rid of every type of technology.
I mean, that just sounds like nothing about what you're saying gives me the dread that that definition did. Everything you're saying is like, hey, literally everything you ever need
Well, I
extra
don't
is
think
on
it.
your
Yeah,
wrist.
it's exactly the point. And that's why I wanted to bring that up. Is that I don't. I think it can be either. I think it can be like, it's the dread that you're saying. I think sort of spins from one, the terrifyingness of black holes, but then also that sort of iRobot Terminator things that I mentioned. Like, it is this sort of technology taking over in whatever form that is, whether it's just we get integrated with technology, like technology becomes a figurative black hole and everything becomes technology, or technology just sort of wins and eliminates humanity or enslaves humanity or whatever. That's the sort of dread-esque thing that I think. Yeah, even though that's not exactly what you were thinking, it's those similar vibes. Whereas mine is a much more on the opposite side. It's sort of utopian almost, of like, you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to.
Yeah,
There's
but
no
we're humans.
longer.
We don't reach utopian awesomeness. we reach horrible black holes.
Yeah, no, yeah, the former is more likely. But I just wanted to. We had two definitions of singularity. I don't want to immediately dismiss the other one.
I do. I think the other one is a grammatical definition versus what people were likely envisioning when they referred to the
I'll have to
technological.
read what's his face's book to. I'm assuming since he's the one that pops up when I search the singularity, I'll have to see what his take on it is.
So going back to the other one though, my guess on the idea that it is this swirling black hole still leads me with two questions. And those questions are the what point is the irreversible point? Is the irreversible point the materials that we require to create the devices that we no longer have access to, or we come across the ability to use antimatter? But in order to use it, we need machines that have a material that we burn through in human civilization, and thus we've done irreversible damage.
Oh,
Or
that's interesting. Sorry, continue your.
or is the idea the robots make robots and it's irreversible because our robots are making robots. We can't stop the robots from making robots because the robots that they have made are now making robots.
Mm-hmm.
Or with the internet, if we go back to the initial thing, AI generated stuff, if we have an adaptive AI who lives on the internet, that is irreversible. We cannot kill the internet at this point.
Yeah, but my interesting point was just thinking like my initial thought with this, specifically with the more dread based black hole analogy, not my utopian analogy, was always like the references I was making. It was always futuristic. It was always robots taking over, or like the AI or whatever. But that first point that you made of like, if it's just military technology, and then that just ends up in a Fallout-esque thing, like that's essentially the concept that it's reaching, like a hypothetical future where technology growth is out of control and irreversible. The intelligent and powerful technologies radically and predictably transform our reality. I mean,
Right,
post-apocalypse.
The intelligence technologies. I didn't read
These
any more of this
intelligent and powerful technologies will radically and unpredictably transform our reality.
That makes it sound similar to what you were saying, but less OmniTool-esque and more of we invent a syringe that we can stab someone with and fix any wound.
Yeah, I mean, even in this one, this is from techtarget.com definition, whereas my first one I got was just from Wikipedia. And this one even just specifically ends this little blurb saying that the debate that we just had, the word singularity has many different meanings, however, and it all depends on the context. So, I mean, there are what the technological singularity could be to us untrained, uneducated minds. Could be, hell, maybe it is anything to the educated mind. Sort of what it seems like. This seems to be a very abstract concept from about 5 seconds of Googling.
So then that's why I wanted to start it with this idea of visualizing it. Just strip away everything we've talked about up to this point.
Yeah.
And try to picture a chart, and on that chart we have technological growth. Start in the 400 BCs, whenever we really started growing in technology. When did the Romans get aqueducts? I'm going to say that's when technology started booming.
No idea.
That's
not the slightest clue.
All right, historians, there you go. Technology didn't boom, not the wheel. Nope, wheel didn't do it. It was the aqueducts by the Romans. Anyways, looking at a chart and seeing technology slowly grow, we know for a fact that within the last 20 years or so, we've had more of a growth in technology at such a rapid rate than any other point in human history, to the point that you could take the last 2,000 years and they haven't made as many advancements as we have in the last 20, because of this idea that we're just spiking and spiking and spiking. We keep coming up with new stuff and new ways to interact with it. And the idea of the singularity to me was essentially as this graph continues to spike and spike and spike up, it eventually hits a point where it's not spiking. We're not just inventing new things. It's now circling. Like we don't is this an upgrade? Is this a downgrade? Is it going in circles? Where is this technology taking us? And we're so lost in this maze of growth that we can't go back. We don't have a plateau to fall back upon. It's either we EMP everything and we go back to zero, the year zero, or we continue with what we have and do what we can to make it work.
That'd be interesting. The We have our BC, we have our AD, and then we have
Our reset.
our yeah, AT after technology, RT
Ooh.
reset technology.
Ooh. I like the idea of AT. I like the idea that we stop recording human history by AD and we start recording it by AT, as in this technology, the discovery of antimatter is at this point, and that just changed civilization.
Oh, I was thinking like with the EMP hard reset thing, but you're saying once we reach this singularity, once we reach this theoretical high point, I guess, that becomes the new.
But yeah, that's when we start changing how we keep track of human history, because it's never going to be what it used to be. People in that era are going to look back at the 2000s and they're like, wow, it was simple. They had technologies that worked exactly how they expected it to. Now we have technologies that are powered by an energy source that sometimes they generate great dungeons and sometimes they generate horror dating sims where I have a
That's
toxic relationship.
Callback, folks. He said he doesn't know what he's doing.
But those are all the topics from Mr. Lasagna. So, Mr. Lasagna, I hope you enjoyed listening to what we had to say about them, diving into some hypotheticals, some theoreticals, and absolutely no research outside of what we could do while we were recording.
Yep. I don't know if that was the end.
I was kind of hoping that was gonna be the end, but now you're still talking.
I didn't have anything else to add.
And we're out.